There's a house shape that engineers call the strongest enclosure ever designed by humans. And right now you can build a livable version of it for less than the price of a used car. It sheds hurricane winds, it barely needs heating or cooling, and most people driving past one have no idea. It is a full-time home. Today I am breaking down the Ekodome tiny house, real 2026 pricing, real builders, and the one mistake that quietly rots a dream dome from the inside out if nobody warns you about it first. Before we get into it, hit subscribe and tap that notification bell. I put out real cost breakdowns on alternative housing every single week. No sponsorships, no affiliate links, just honest numbers, and you do not want to miss the next one. Now stick around because near the end, I'm going to show you the smallest dome build on this list, and its price is going to surprise you. A Ekodome tiny house is a small-scale geodesic or monolithic dome, usually between 200 and 450 square feet, built as a full-time or seasonal residence instead of a greenhouse or event tent. The design traces back to architect Buckminster Fuller, who popularized the geodesic dome in the 20th century. The American Institute of Architects has called the geodesic dome the strongest, lightest, and most efficient way to enclose space that we know of. And that engineering advantage is exactly why this style keeps resurfacing in the tiny home world. A dome uses a network of triangles instead of flat walls and a peaked roof. Triangles do not flex the way rectangles do, so the whole structure distributes stress evenly across the shell. That is why dome homes in Florida and dome homes in Texas keep showing up in hurricane and tornado footage, still standing, while the house next door lost its roof. Let us talk real numbers, because this is where most dome videos get vague, and I do not want to do that to you. At the very bottom end, small backyard scale domes in the 8 to 10 foot range, the kind used as a sleeping pod, office, or sauna, run about $2,000 to $4,500 for a basic fabric skin kit. Step up to a premium version with metal hubs and polycarbonate panels, and you're looking at $5,500 to $8,000. For something you could actually live in full-time, most dome tiny house kits fall into two brackets. Entry-level polycarbonate panel kits, suitable as a guest room, office, or compact residence, run $10,000 to $18,000. A mid-range vacation-grade dome with insulated panels built for year-round comfort runs $18,000 to $25,000. Now, Pacific Domes out of Ashland, Oregon gets referenced constantly online with a $9,500 price tag attached to their 24-foot kit, and that number is outdated. For 2026, a full-scale 24-foot living or glamping kit with a standard architectural vinyl cover and metal framing actually starts closer to $11,500 to $14,000. That 24-foot shell gets you 426 square feet of floor space with a 14-foot ceiling, before foundation, insulation upgrades, and interior finishing. Natural Spaces Domes in Minnesota builds the Min Dome, a 400 square foot main floor dome with a 125 square foot loft. Their shell and panel package runs roughly $83,000 to just over $103,000, but I need to be precise here. That price is for the structural shell and panel kit only, not a move and ready home. Once you add site work, plumbing, electrical, and a finished interior, a turnkey Min Dome realistically lands in the $180,000 to $220,000 range. Huge difference, and exactly the kind of number that trips people up when they are comparing kit prices across different companies. Ekodome builds hard-shell dome kits using cast aluminum hubs and T-slot extruded aluminum framing instead of the wood strut and steel hub combination older dome companies rely on. Their 22-foot models, sold under names like the Cosmos and the Terra, are engineered with documented snow load and wind load ratings, with some configurations tested to Category 5 equivalent wind resistance. That aluminum framing system is a meaningfully different build than a fabric tent dome, and it shows up in both the price and the lifespan. And if you want fully custom, contractor-built shells with concrete and steel reinforcement, expect $100 to $250 per square foot, which is where larger dome homes start creeping past the tiny house category entirely. A few real projects are worth knowing by name if you are researching this seriously. Dodeca Domes, run by designer Joshua Tulberg, built something called the Mini Dome, believed to be the first Pentakes dodecahedron tiny house ever constructed, a 60-sided geodesic shape with a welded steel hub and wooden struts. It sits on a raised pier and beam foundation with 308 square feet spread across 2 levels, and it has operated as a short-term rental while a bare hub kit version is being developed for buyers. Ekodome's Cosmos and Terra series, as we just covered, bring engineered aluminum framing and documented structural load ratings to the small dome category, which matters most if you're building somewhere with real snow load or hurricane exposure. American Ingenuity offers 10 different geodesic dome kit sizes for owner-builders who want a hurricane-resistant concrete shell, which is a common route for people building in the Gulf Coast or Florida. Here is something almost every dome kit listing leaves out of the headline price. A geodesic hub structure cannot sit directly on bare dirt. The hubs need a level, stable base that will not shift, which means you're building a wooden deck platform, setting concrete piers, or pouring a ring wall foundation before a single strut gets bolted together. That site prep work typically adds another $3,000 to $8,000 on top of the kit price, depending on your soil, your local frost line, and whether you are hiring it out or doing it yourself. If a video or a listing quotes you a dome price with no mention of the foundation, that number is not the number you will actually pay. Once the shell is up, you still have to finish the inside, and this is where a dome quietly gives back some of the savings it promised you on the shell. Drywall, plywood, and wood paneling are manufactured in flat rectangular sheets. A dome interior is made entirely of triangles at varying angles. Every sheet you cut to fit a triangular panel leaves an oddly shaped offcut that usually cannot be reused anywhere else in the build. Finishers commonly report waste factors up to 30% on interior paneling for a dome, compared to 5 to 10% on a standard rectangular room. Budget for that extra material up front, because it does not show up in most kit price sheets. This is the mistake I promised you at the start of this video, and it is the one that turns a dream dome into a very expensive repair bill. A dome does not vent the way a rectangular house does. Heat and moist air rise and collect at the apex, the single highest point of the shell. And if that apex is not properly vented, you get exactly what you would expect, trapped moisture with nowhere to go. The failure usually comes from one of 2 mistakes. First, a missing or incomplete vapor barrier, which lets warm indoor moisture migrate into the wall and panel assembly, where it condenses against the cooler outer shell. Second, unvented thermal bridging at the hub connections, the metal or wood joints where struts meet, which become cold spots that attract condensation even when the rest of the panel is properly insulated. Closed-cell spray foam insulation, applied correctly with an intact vapor barrier, solves most of this because it seals the panel as a single continuous layer instead of leaving gaps at every seam and hub. But it has to be done right, and it has to be done at the apex specifically, not just around the walls. Skip it or hire someone unfamiliar with dome-specific insulation detailing, and you are looking at mold growth and slow structural rot at the very top of your home, the hardest and most expensive part of the shell to access and repair later. If you take one thing away from this video, take this. When you're pricing a dome kit or hiring a contractor, ask specifically how the apex is vented and how the vapor barrier is detailed at every hub connection. If they cannot answer that clearly, keep shopping. Traditional stick frame construction costs have climbed more than 40% since 2020 according to the National Association of Home Builders, and that inflation figure holds up against updated 2026 home builder cost indexes. That single fact is pushing more people toward alternative shells like domes, which typically use around 25% less material than a rectangular home of the same square footage. Domes are also genuinely efficient to run when they are built correctly, because there are no flat walls fighting the wind and no corners for heat to escape through. Owners commonly report energy savings up into the hundreds of dollars per year compared to a conventional home the same size. The curved shell means air naturally circulates without dead corners, so heating and cooling equipment does not have to work as hard. And then there is the ceiling height. Most tiny homes feel like a hallway. A 24-foot dome gives you a 14-foot peak, and that changes how a small space feels almost more than anything else on this list. beyond moisture management. Curved walls are genuinely harder to furnish. A rectangular bookshelf or a standard kitchen cabinet run does not sit flush against a sphere, so a lot of dome interiors need custom built-ins, which adds cost back in on the finishing side, even if the shell itself was cheap. Permitting can also be inconsistent. Some counties treat a geodesic dome like any other single-family structure. Others have never seen a permit application for one and will slow you down with extra engineering review, especially for anything larger than an accessory structure. Always call your local building department before you buy kit, not after. And DIY assembly, while genuinely doable, is not a weekend project the way some kit companies imply. A 10 to 12-foot dome takes a dedicated hobbyist 6 to 12 hours to assemble, but a full-size livable dome with plumbing, electrical, and insulation is a multi-month build even with a crew, and most owner builders bring in paid help for the system's work, especially the apex venting and vapor barrier detailing we just talked about. Now here is the build I promised you at the top. Out of every dome build I researched for this video, the cheapest path to an actual insulated, for-season micro dome that a person can sleep in year-round, done correctly, is not a giant kit from a big manufacturer. It is a small-format hard-shell dome in the 18 to 22-foot range, set on a properly built pier or deck foundation for $3,000 to $8,000, using an entry-level insulated panel kit in that $10,000 to $18,000 bracket, with closed-cell spray foam and correct apex venting handled by someone who has done dome work before, then finished out over a few months for another $8,000 to $12,000 in insulation detailing, a mini-split, a composting toilet, basic electrical, and enough extra paneling budget to cover that 30% triangular waste factor. That puts a genuinely livable, code-adjacent, for-season micro-dome tiny house in the $22,000 to $35,000 range total, fully finished, built right, and still undercutting most stick-built tiny houses on wheels I have covered on this channel, with better wind resistance than any of them. If you're seriously considering a dome build, start with your local building department before you spend $1 on a kit. Budget for finishing work and foundation costs on top of the shell price, not instead of it, and make apex venting and vapor barrier detailing a non-negotiable line item, not an afterthought. If this breakdown actually helped you picture what a dome build costs in the real world, subscribe for more honest tiny home research every week. Drop a comment telling me which builder from this video you would actually go with, and check the 2 videos on screen right now for more alternative housing options I've covered. I will see you in the next one.